It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Conversations with Joan. Conversations with Joan will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life's Conversations with Joan. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Conversations with Joan focuses on topics that are important to your life, from health and wellness to professional development to personal well-being. Change makers join me to share their insights, tips, and strategies so you can thrive and live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. Now, let's start talking. In today's world, bullying and aggressive behavior is becoming increasingly prevalent. It's easy to dismiss bullies as hateful or evil, but according to today's guest, Bill Eddy, only by understanding how their personalities work can people effectively intervene with adult bullying behavior. He joins us today to explain how bullies manipulate others and what we can do to overcome their power. Bill is Chief Innovation Officer of the High Conflict Institute. He's the author of Our New World of Adult Bullies: How to Spot Them, How to Stop Them. Welcome, Bill. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Joan. I'm glad to be on.
So, Bill, let's begin with a definition. What is an adult bully? How is that type of person defined?
Well, the way I define it, and with the High Conflict Institute, we define it, is really 6 characteristics. First is a preoccupation with blaming others. Second is a lot of all or nothing thinking. Third is often unmanaged emotions, although that's not always obvious. That's what's driving them inside. Fourth is extreme behaviors. They may engage in behaviors that no one else would, or 90% of people wouldn't. And then the fifth is that they have a drive to dominate others. And the sixth is sometimes that drive is to destroy others, destroy their reputations, and sometimes destroy their lives. So we see these 6 characteristics, which are all observable if people are looking for them.
Does a bully usually exhibit all of these characteristics?
Well, I think that they usually have all of them, except they may not want to destroy people, but they always seem to want to dominate others, either in the moment, like some extreme experience, or in a relationship, what I call a win-lose relationship. They want to win, but they want the other person to lose. This could be at work, in families, communities, etc.
And I would assume that there would be different degrees of this. So, for example, someone may want to be more dominant in a relationship, but it may not be quite as destructive as another person.
Yes, there's a wide range of this, but the theme is always they want to be in charge, they want to dominate, and they don't really care that much about the other person. There's often a lack of empathy, lack of remorse, lack of emotional control. So those characteristics, I would say, are always present, but the degree of it varies. Like in a relationship, someone that just pushes someone around in verbally versus someone who physically hits their partner. That'd be a range of possibilities.
What do you believe is at the root of this type of behavior?
Well, I really think this is personality-based, and I've studied personalities in families, in the workplace, and legal disputes really for about 40 years. And it really seems like this is something, to some extent, they're driven to do by their personality, and that it isn't so much like a daily decision as much as I just need to dominate people. and so it's kind of odd. People say, well, what happened to make him want to do that? Or what happened to make her want to do that? And I would say, by adulthood, if they're into bullying, it's really because it's part of their personality.
Do you see it getting worse? So, for example, anyone who spends any time on social media, it's hard not to see this type of behavior. It's almost like the animals have been let out of the zoo. I've never seen anything like this. Someone can make a post about anything, and you'll have a list of people that are then calling names, saying mean things, trying to persuade someone to say it their way. What is going on with human beings today?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. It's about letting them out of the zoo, in a sense, because what we're seeing isn't everybody becoming a bully. We're seeing the 5 to 10% of people that have bullying tendencies feeling more free and more allowed, more permission to act on those urges. And I think if you look back in the past, that bullies were kind of pushed to the side of families, of communities, of the workplace, and it's like, we don't like your behavior, you sit over there. And what's happening now is their behaviors on center stage, and we pay a lot of attention to it because we have all of these different media, but especially social media, where you can just instantly do something and instantly react to it. And some research that I mentioned in the book, some research found that it isn't everybody becoming more hostile, like online, that the percent of people who are bullies just feel more comfortable exposing themselves online. Actually, I shouldn't say exposing themselves, because you don't know often who they even are. And so expressing themselves online and not feeling any, these are people that don't feel a sense of shame, remorse, emotional control. And so now they feel like encouraged. It isn't just that they're not being discouraged, but they're encouraged, because look at all the attention you can get today.
And so if you're dealing with a person who doesn't feel shame or remorse, how do you even navigate that if you're the victim of someone's behavior?
I put in 6 strategies in the book, let me just mention 2 of them right off the top, and that is setting limits and imposing consequences. And frankly, setting limits doesn't work very well with bullies unless you have consequences to back them up. And so when they realize, oh, I could lose my job, or oh, I could lose this relationship, or I could lose in court if I keep acting this way. And that seems to be what gets their attention and sometimes slows them down. And sometimes that's the only thing that stops them, is they're restrained by their community or the society through the legal system.
Well, and I think the problem with that on a social level is that when you have that strong bully, you have so many people that are around that person that are afraid to speak up, that the victim often stands alone, and it is hard to impose those consequences.
Exactly, and that's why part of my writing this book is we as a society and culture have to wake up to the need for setting more limits and imposing more consequences. And what's kind of fascinating from an objective distance is, in society, you want everyone to manage themselves reasonably. Like, think of a highway, everyone stay in their lane. Well, with bullies, we're now having to learn how to manage other people's behavior, and that we need skills for that. And part of, with High Conflict Institute, the training institute that I work with, we've developed some simple skills to help calm conflicts and restrain people who engage in these kinds of behaviors, because it's now something, it's up to all of us. Mm-hmm. And part of it is helping each other out. My cover I really like on the book is a bully fish chasing a little fish, and a whole lot of other little fish getting together to distract and chase the bully fish. And I think that's often what we need, is we need enough people around the person to say, hey, Joe, cut it out. Hey, Jane, cut it out. That's what we're going to need to do more of.
Would you share 1 or 2 of those strategies with us?
The first of the 6 strategies is just recognize you're dealing with a bully, and that bullies can't stop themselves. And notice I use that word can't. And a lot of people think that they won't stop themselves, but if they argue with them and criticize them, that they will stop themselves. So the first is recognize I'm dealing with a bully, and I'm going to have to do something. Either speak up assertively or not aggressively, because then you look like a bully. You start screaming at the bully, they're going to point at you and say, hey, everybody, look, he's bullying me. So you don't want to do that. You want to speak up assertively and say, hey, cut it out. And also getting help from other people. The second strategy I have is called pulling the plug on the bully. Often we assist bullies and don't even really realize it. And one of the ways is keeping it secret. And that's why a lot of people are surprised how much bullying there is going on, because it's mostly done in private. I know about that because I've worked with people in families as a therapist and mediator and lawyer. I've worked with people in the workplace. I've worked with legal disputes that no one else knew about. This is like private stuff. And so the public isn't aware. There's a lot of bullying going on, especially since the pandemic. So look at how you can pull the plug on the bully and not participate. So those would be a couple of the strategies.
So you just mentioned that there's a lot going on, especially since the pandemic. What did the COVID pandemic do to make bullying worse?
I think a couple things. One is people stayed home, and so they weren't using social skills as much. And to some extent, they may have lost some of their social skills. And the second thing, I think we all spent a whole lot of time watching TV and watching, movies on TV, watching visual stuff. And a lot of the images that we saw were images of people bullying. And the news would show bullying. And during the first year of the pandemic, there was a lot of conflict around masks, around vaccines, around racial justice, all of this around national politics, and you kind of see this divide opening up, or polarization, which I talk about. And ironically, polarization allows people to act badly, because now you have a group that supports whatever you want to say about those other people at the other side of the polarization. And so this combination of loosening up our self-restraints while we're all at home and seeing images of people bullying other people, I think those two things really escalated, especially when the pandemic started to lift and people started coming out and being around other people. They're bullying other people because that seems like what you do today.
Well, all the media and all the communication we have is a positive thing, but on the other hand, it does really create a major groupthink. Like you said, it gives people who would have at one time been home thinking about something on their own, it gives them a lot of camaraderie with people who think just the way they do.
Exactly. And what's interesting when you think about not just the pandemic, but the course of the last few decades, that our technologies have enabled us to pretty much work alone, and even work alone from home. And that when you work with other people and rely on other people, you have a sense of camaraderie from your work, your group. And you each have a task to do, and you help each other out. Well, in many ways, we've lost that through the success of our technologies. And instead, what holds people together? Because human beings need to have groups, have people that they care about, that they're connected to. So generally, what holds people together, the social glue, is a common task, common beliefs, and common enemies. Well, we've lost the common tasks. So now we're really relying on what pulls people together is common beliefs and common enemies. And that's where you get so much more like political polarization than we've had in my lifetime. And it just seems that this is a change that has happened without us being aware of it, and that we can overcome this if we realize it. We can manage this. We can talk to people who disagree with us, and that's okay. But somehow we've lost some of that. So now we have this social bonding over our beliefs and our enemies, and the world can't survived that for decades, I think, having everybody except our group be our enemy.
You know, when you were talking about the importance of community and socialization, I worry about the next generation. The other day I was walking my dog in the morning and I passed a high school bus stop, and there were 8 kids that were on this bus stop, and not one of them was talking to each other. Every one of them had their heads down on their phone. And I thought to myself, when I was their age and we were at the bus stop, we couldn't wait to get there and talk to each other. And these kids were just so isolated from one another that it does worry me about what their social skills will be like as adults.
I completely agree with you. And that's why the move to have them not have their phones from the start of the school day to the end of the school day, I strongly endorse that. Because what happens is you don't use social skills. You don't navigate different points of view with people who you like. That you get the point of view of people that all agree with each other on social media, and you communicate with the people that agree with you, and you don't manage relationships like real relationships with people who don't agree on everything, and yet you like them, and yet they're part of your community, and you go, oh, I never thought about it that way before, or we're going to have to agree to disagree. But hey, what about that game this weekend? Or, what movie do you want to go to? Or let's go get some pizza. You're missing that kind of interaction, and you're totally right. It doesn't bode well for the future.
I was raised in a time where we were told, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. And now today, no matter what you say, there's always someone who is like, okay, Karen, or they just have a really nasty comeback. What would you say to people that are listening to you right now who may notice that they're beginning to exhibit bullying behavior? How can those people change to become more compassionate to others?
Well, one of the things we teach is a technique we call EAR statements, EAR, that stands for empathy, attention, and respect. And we encourage people, if a conflict starts arising, is to try to find some statement you can make that shows empathy for the other person. It's like, hey, I know this is a hard day. I can see you're going through a lot. I'll pay attention. Tell me more. I want to understand your point of view. And respect is point out from time to time things you respect about the other person. And what's interesting is people like hearing these things. And we all do, and we're kind of missing that. And so we have to more consciously connect with each other and say statements that show empathy or attention or respect. And this could just be a sentence. Because like, oh, wow, I can see how important that is to you. And this can be something you totally disagree on, and you can see how important it is to the other person. It's like these things help relationships exist. Relationships need nurturing, and they also need rules and boundaries. And like you said, holding our tongue, that's one of the big differences with human beings from other animals who share a sense of fear, a sense of caring, and that's one thing I put in the book, that we share a lot of emotional systems with all other mammals. But what's different with human beings is we have conscious control over those. And I think we're losing a little bit of that these days. But learning to hold our tongue is a huge thing in relationships. That's how large families used to get along. Now we have smaller families. We don't hold our tongue as much, or we think it's cool to say nasty things, and that's not sustainable.
It's important to be mindful because the only person that we can control is ourselves. And so, like you're saying, if we can learn to have more empathy and more compassion, then maybe we can start a new movement and change the way we're interacting with one another.
That's our hope. And the work we do with the High Conflict Institute, a lot of it is with families, especially like going through divorce, custody disputes, things over children, where we teach both parents to use these kinds of methods, but also in the workplace. Now that people are back maybe in the same space, and even online, is it's important to nurture relationships, to practice self-restraint. But in communities as well, where our communities are a lot weaker now, because we don't have as many community institutions where we hang out together. And like you're talking about kids after school hanging out at the basketball court or the pizza joint or something like that. And now hanging out in their bedrooms with their phone and social media. And so we need to practice this more consciously. I think that's what's going to make a difference here, is people are going to consciously have more positive conversations, because you just can't count on them spontaneously happening anymore.
Mm-hmm. Bill, is there a type of person that is more prone to being the victim of a bully? Do they prey on a particular personality?
That's hard, because what I think is bullies bully everybody, but they don't keep bullying people who stand up to them and say, hey, cut it out. I'm not going to stand for that. Look at what he's doing, everybody. He's picking on me, and that's really not wise, or things like that. I think the people that end up being the targets over and over again are people who are more passive about it. And I won't say that's a particular personality, but it's a pattern of behavior. And if you tolerate bullies and you allow them to intimidate you, and you believe that you've done something wrong or that you deserve this, then that's the kind of person. But in terms of one personality style, I wouldn't say that's the case. And I would say even strong people can become targets of a bully and become more passive. And I include an example in the book, a British musician, singer, songwriter, FKA Twigs, and how she got, for about a year, into a relationship where she was quite beaten down. I think there was certainly domestic violence, but she was also subject to coercive control, where this person said, you can't have eye contact with other men, you can't, be active with friends, I should be everything you need, and all of that. And I would say she didn't have a passive personality, but somehow she allowed this to get started, and then she lost self-esteem. And she said, I started to lose a sense of myself, and people who knew her couldn't understand what was happening. So I think it's important that people don't think, oh, I have a target personality, or that there's a specific personality. It's more being passive. Mm-hmm. And anybody can fall prey to that, and that's what you got to watch out for. Don't deal with this passively. You've got to take action either with the bully or getting away from the bully.
Well, also, isn't it correct that the bully has learned this behavior over time, that they become master manipulators? They know your weaknesses. They know how to make you feel like you're less than, or it's your fault, or you don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. And I think, people ask, what's the difference between adult bullies and child bullies? And I say 90% of child bullies have stopped bullying by adulthood. They've learned it doesn't work. But they're also, like they blurt things out, or they physically push somebody, stuff like that. The adult bullies have been bullies as children, and they've refined their skills. And as adults, they're much more manipulative. They can be very seductive until people are in relationships with them. And that's not just romantically. It can be in business relationships, even political relationships, that they kind of draw people in. And you think, oh, this is a wonderful person. It isn't just like they're okay, they're wonderful. What they don't realize is they're being seduced by a bully who, once the bully has them, is going to bully them. Mm-hmm. And we see that a lot in romantic relationships. That's how bullies start. They start by being extremely charming. And then when they've got you and you make a commitment, that's when the bullying begins, because now they're confident they can get away with it.
So they're usually narcissists.
I would say a lot of them are narcissists. I look at three different personality types of bullies in the book. One is narcissistic bullies who are very self-centered and charming and all that. Another is antisocial bullies who in some ways are more extreme than narcissists because they don't have a conscience. They don't care. They may even enjoy hurting other people. These are your con artists who totally lie. They make up stories that don't exist. And I see this sadly in court cases where someone accuses someone else of something that's completely untrue, but they're very persuasive because they've been con artists for a lifetime. I also talk some about borderline bullies, and this is a borderline personality style that has wide mood swings, but also lacks emotional self-control. And so they aren't necessarily out to hurt people, they just react emotionally. And we see this, say, in a lot of the domestic violence perpetrators, men who are really triggered by a sense that they're losing the attachment relationship they have with their partner, and they overreact and hit them, and then they say they're sorry, I'll never do that again, but then emotions take over and they do that again. So I would say there's tendency to have these three personalities, which have been recognized in the mental health manual as what they call cluster B personality disorders, who tend to be erratic, emotional, and dramatic, and also domineering, vindictive, and intrusive. So there's a connection, although not everybody with those personality disorders is a bully, but there is some overlap.
Bill, in about 30 seconds or less, what's a takeaway? What do you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, I want people to recognize when you're dealing with a bully, and you're going to have that now that they're coming into our lives. So recognize the pattern is to be assertive with either saying cut it out or getting away from the bully, to tell yourself you don't deserve bullying. There's nothing you've done to deserve this behavior, and to get help. If you're in the workplace, maybe talk to a supervisor, not the one that's bullying you if it's a supervisor, but also HR, other authorities, and the organizations need to have policies and set limits and say, hey, that's not okay in our organization, and have consequences if they do. So that's a quick summary.
And the book is Our New World of Adult Bullies, How to Spot Them, How to Stop Them. Bill, where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your work?
Our website is HIGH conflictinstitute.com. It's www.highconflictinstitute.com. We have a lot of books. We have a lot of video trainings. We do consultation. We do trainings for organizations. And we also have a lot of free articles. We have about 50 articles about how to deal with difficult people in your environment, families, at work, in communities, etc. So we got a lot of resources. The articles are all free, so there's something for everybody.
Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Joan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided is the opinion of our guest and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read our digital articles, and be sure to subscribe to our mailing list. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.